I've dedicated 15 years to this organization, maintaining a record as clean as a whistle. Yet my wife filed a real name report accusing me of taking a $2 million bribe. They couldn't find a single cent of illicit funds. Once my innocence was proven, my superior gripped my hand offering a formal apology. I remained silent, turning on my heel to head home, gazing at my daughter's soft, innocent face. Memories of my wife's icy indifference over the years flooded back, along with that cousin who was always dropping by our house. The next day, I took my daughter straight to the hospital. The moment the paternity test results were revealed, my entire body began to tremble. His hand was dry and warm, but I just stared at him without uttering a word. A document lay flat on the desk, stamped with official red ink and bold black text. Investigative conclusion regarding the $2 million bribery allegations against Zhao Yi. Ruling the whistleblower's report is unsubstantiated. 3 months, 92 agonizing days. I spent every waking moment trapped in a room smaller than 10 square meters. My 3 meals a day were delivered through a slot, twice every single day. They subjected me to intense interrogations. They scrutinized the origin of every single deposit and the destination of every single expenditure. I repeated my story until I was hoarse. I told them I never took a dime. They seemed skeptical, yet also strangely convinced. Today, the nightmare finally reached its end. Group leader Wang personally escorted me out of the office building. Regarding your department, though, I've already cleared things up with Director Zhang. He mentioned holding a brief meeting for you to officially restore your reputation. I gave a simple nod. Go home and get some proper rest. Your wife, she's had a tough time too. I froze in my tracks and locked eyes with him. A flicker of awkwardness crossed his face. Ah, right. My wife Zhou Rui. She played the hero of justice, sacrificing her family. By filing that real name report against me. She claimed there was a $2 million certificate of deposit hidden in our nightstand. When they pried the secret compartment open, it was completely empty. Nothing. There was absolutely nothing. That's what Zhou Rui claimed. I looked them in the eye and uttered only 3 words. I'm innocent. And now my name is finally cleared. Group leader Wang patted my shoulder before walking away. I stood under the sunlight, the glare making my head swim. My phone suddenly vibrated in my pocket. It was Director Zhang. Zhao Yi, where are you? I'm throwing you a welcome back dinner tonight to wash away the bad luck. No thanks, I replied. I just really want to go home. There was a brief silence on the other end. Fair enough. Your wife must be anxiously waiting for you. Rest easy. I'll handle everything regarding your work arrangements. I hung up the phone and headed for home. At the workplace where I hadn't made a mistake in 15 years. I had become the hottest topic of gossip because of this. And the home I'd lived in for 12 years. Because of this, it felt like I could never truly return. I hailed a cab and blurted out my address. As the car moved, the shadows of the trees outside retreated in a rapid rhythmic blur. My mind was a total blank. Until the taxi finally pulled up downstairs. I paid the fare and stepped out, walking slowly into the hallway. I pulled out my keys and slid them into the lock. The door creaked open. Mommy, higher. Go even higher, though. I swapped my shoes and stepped inside. Zhou Rui was hoisting a model airplane, playfully teasing our daughter Zhao Anan. Anan was perched on the sofa, kicking her tiny legs, and giggling uncontrollably. She saw me and froze. Daddy. Her voice was barely a whisper, laced with a heartbreaking sense of timidity. 3 months? And she's already become a stranger to me. Zhou Rui set the model down, and stood up slowly. You're finally back. I stared intently at him, noticing he'd grown a bit gaunt, as if he were the one suffering some monumental grievance. I gave a cold, short response. I strolled over to the sofa and sank into the cushions. Anan poked her tiny head out from behind her mother, stealing glances at me. That face. It was so rosy and plump, absolutely adorable. I used to love pinching those cheeks more than anything. But now, as I stare at that same face, my heart is nothing but a block of ice. Have some water. A cup was thrust toward me. I didn't reach for it. When did you find out I was being released? This morning. Group leader Wang gave me a heads up. The living room was suffocatingly quiet. The TV was flickering, but the volume was muted. A fruit platter sat on the table, the grapes inside looking exceptionally fresh. Suddenly, a memory flashed through my mind. The day they hauled me away, it was a Wednesday. That very afternoon, my colleague, cousin Sun Peng, said he'd be over for dinner. He was my senior back in university, and later we worked in the same system. Our parents were old acquaintances, so our families were tight. That's why Zhou Rui called him cousin. He was a bachelor, who loved hanging around and mooching meals at my place. After I was taken away, did he ever stop by? Has Sun Peng been around lately? Zhou Rui's body stiffened visibly. It was subtle, but I caught it. No, of course not. With the mess you were in, how could he have the nerve to show up? Her eyes were darting around, avoiding mine. I said nothing. merely snatched the remote from the table and killed the TV. I stood up. I'm exhausted. I'm going to lie down. I trudged toward the bedroom. Dinner is ready. Aren't you going to eat at tequila? No. I pushed the bedroom door open. The bed was neatly made, looking exactly as it did before I left. My professional books on the nightstand had been swapped for glossy fashion magazines. I yanked open the nightstand drawer, finding my watch and wallet tossed inside. The secret compartment had been crudely pried open and ruined, leaving behind a jagged, hideous scar in the wood. I reached inside feeling nothing but emptiness. Zhou Rui was hovering by the doorway, looking utterly flustered and lost. Zhao Yi, please let me explain. I was possessed. I wasn't thinking straight that day. I turned around slowly to face her. She was trembling, tears streaming down her face one after another. The pressure was just too suffocating. I was terrified someone would call me, claiming you took the bribe and were bound to get caught. They told me if I blew the whistle first, it would count as a merit for our family. The pathetic lies spilling from her mouth didn't match any of the 100 scenarios I'd agonized over while in custody. Her excuses were downright laughable. I watched her sob, yet I felt absolutely nothing. 15 years of marriage. I thought I knew the woman I slept beside. Now I realize I never knew her at all. I stared at her, then looked past her shoulder, at our daughter Anan, who was peeking curiously from the living room. Anan is 5 years old now, and she's the spitting image of Zhou Rui, especially those eyes. People used to say she was the perfect blend of both of us, her mother's eyes and her father's nose. I scrutinized Anan's tiny upturned nose. Did it really look anything like mine? A localized venomous thought burrowed into my brain, and once it took root, there was no shaking it. It felt like acid dissolving every last trace of warmth left in my heart. I walked right up to Zhou Rui. She was still hyperventilating through her tears. Stop crying. My voice was eerily calm. She looked up at me stunned and confused. Tomorrow we're taking Anan to the hospital. The hospital is Anan sick. She sounded genuinely panicked. She's not sick. I locked onto her gaze. We're just going for a few tests. I jolted awake at 6 o'clock the following morning. Zhou Rui was still fast asleep beside me. Her brows furrowed deeply, as if she were trapped in a restless nightmare. I watched her in silence for a fleeting moment, before getting up to wash the grime away. The man in the mirror had wasted away. I looked skeletal like a hollow shell, with eyes that felt entirely foreign. I shaved off my ragged beard, changed into fresh clothes, and at 7 sharp I rapped on Anan's door. Anan, it's time to get up. Silence echoed from inside the room. I pushed the door open without hesitation. Only the crown of her head was visible beneath the sheets. I nudged her awake. She rubbed her weary eyes, fear flickering in her gaze when she saw me. Daddy. Daddy's taking you out for some fun? Where are we going? To a place where they need a little blood sample. And An's face drained of color instantly. I don't want to know blood tests. I'm scared of the pain. She began thrashing on the bed, throwing a desperate tantrum. The commotion jolted Zhou Rui awake. She stormed into the room like a whirlwind. Chao Yi, what do you think you're doing? See, have you lost your damn mind this early? She pulled Anan into a protective embrace, glaring at me. Anan is terrified of needles. Are you seriously that oblivious? What kind of tests are so urgent that they have to be today, seeing her shield the child? She looked like a frantic hen guarding its nest. It has to be today, no exceptions. We stood there in a tense silent standoff. Anan glanced back and forth between us, staring at me then her before bursting into a wailing sob. I don't want to go to the hospital, Atiok. I don't want any needles. Zhou Rui cradled her tight, cooing softly to soothe her, while stabbing me with daggers from her eyes. Exactly what kind of checkup is this? Just a routine physical. I've been gone for so long. Is it a crime to care about my daughter's health? That logic was bulletproof. Zhou Rui bit her lip, unable to muster a rebuttal. I marched over, and pried Anan out of her grasp. Anan's wailing intensified instantly. Either I take her alone, or the three of us go together. Your choice, she glared at me with pure venom. After a few agonizing seconds, she finally backed down. Fine, I'll go change. On the way to the hospital, the atmosphere inside the car was suffocating. I focused on driving, while Zhou Rui and Anan occupied the back seat. Anan was still whimpering softly. Zhou Rui spent the entire trip soothing her, whispering stories into her ear, promising the biggest ice cream once the checkup was over. I caught their reflection in the rearview mirror. It looked so heartwarming. A devoted mother, and an adorable daughter. If that dark thought hadn't taken root yesterday, I probably would have softened. I'd feel guilty for being so cold right after my return. But now my heart was nothing but frozen wasteland. Upon arriving at the hospital, I bypassed the usual desks and registered directly at the paternity testing center. The moment Zhou Rui saw the words Forensic Identification Center, her face drained of all color. Zhao Yi Yu, her voice was trembling. I ignored her completely, dragging Anan toward the entrance. I don't want to go in. There are bad people in there, Anan shrieked. Zhou Rui lunged forward, grabbing my arm with a desperate grip. Zhao Yi, what is the meaning of this? Are you actually doubting Anan Inaminate? Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to pierce bone. People in the hallway began to stop and stare. I shook off her hand with a violent shrug. Got a guilty conscience. I asked her, my voice chillingly cold. She turned ghost white. You bastard. How could you even think such a thing? Anan is your flesh and blood, your own biological daughter. Just because I blew the whistle on you, you're going to retaliate against me like this, to humiliate me and the child this way. I watched her performance intently, every flicker of expression. Every single tear sheet was calculated to perfection. In the past, I would have surrendered immediately, but now the sight only filled me with pure revulsion. We'll know for sure once the test is done. I gripped Anan's hand, refusing to waste another word on her. A nurse approached us. Are you here for the paternity test? Yes, both the adult and child need blood drawn. Anan heard the word blood and began struggling violently. Joe Roy lunged forward, trying to snatch the child away. I used all my strength to keep Anan secured. Take mine first. The needle pierced deep into my arm, and as the blood surged into the collection tube, I didn't feel a shred of pain. Next was Anan. She was held down firmly by two nurses, screaming as if her very heart were being torn out. I hate you, mommy, save me. Joe Roy stood by, sobbing hysterically and hurling curses at me. Zhao Yi, you're a monster. You are going to regret this. I stared at the vial of blood drawn from Anan's arm, feeling a hollow, numbing void in my chest. Once the samples were taken, and the paperwork was finalized, they told us, the results will be ready in 7 business days. You can collect them in person, or we can mail them to you. I'll collect them myself. I stated firmly, walking out of the center. Joe Roy cradled Anan, who was exhausted from crying, and glared at me like I was her mortal enemy. Zhao Yi, we are officially finished. We'll talk after the results are in. I walked ahead toward the parking lot, and she trailed behind in silence. Once we returned home, she tucked Anan in to rest, before storming into the study. I was already at the computer, scouting for divorce lawyers. You owe me a goddamn explanation. She slammed the door shut with a thunderous bang. She shrieked at me. Why are you doing this? Who has been whispering poison in your ear? Was it Sun Peng? It's so. I was actually blindsided that she was the first to mention Sun Peng. It was quite the unexpected twist. I lifted my gaze to meet hers. You think it was him? If not him, then who? Who else besides him ever dares to set foot in our home? He definitely told you something, didn't he? She looked like a drowning woman clutching at a straw. Chao Yi. Don't you dare believe a word he says, Og. He's nothing but a treacherous snake, eh? He's had it out for me for a long time. Watching her, the irony of the situation was almost comical. I was locked away for 92 days. My wife never spared a single thought for my suffering, and my cousin never even bothered with a single welfare call. And now she's desperately trying to shift the blame onto him. And what exactly did he tell me? I played along, feeding into her narrative. She froze up completely. He must have badmouthed me, claiming I'm having some scandalous affair with another man. She tested the waters with her question, but I remained silent. The color continued to drain from her face until she was ghostly. Zhao Yi, you can't think of me that way. We've been husband and wife for 15 years. What kind of person I am? Yarim sure say, don't you know me at all? I used to think I did, I said, shutting down the computer. Until the results are officially out, we'll be sleeping in separate rooms. I stood up and paced out of the study. You take the master bedroom, Ed. I'll take the guest room. She stood there, rooted to the spot, her entire body trembling. What if the results prove Anan is your daughter? Zhao Yi, how are you going to fix things then? I paused for a brief second. If she is, I'll get on my knees and beg for your forgiveness. I yanked open the guest room door and stepped inside. As the door clicked shut, I heard a guttural cry of pure despair erupt from outside. The 7-day countdown for the results began. Those 7 days felt like a goddamn century. Joe Roy and I were existing under the same roof. Yet we were nothing more than total strangers. Not a single word passed between us. A part-time cook handled our meals now, leaving the moment the food hit the table. Joe Roy and I purposefully ate at different times. Even Anan seemed to sense the toxic tension. She stopped her usual noisy playing and spent most of her time holed up in her room. Occasionally, when I'd pass by her door, I could overhear her whispering to her dolls. Mommy and Daddy don't like me anymore. It felt like a jagged needle stabbing my heart, but I didn't stop to comfort her. I spent the bulk of those 7 days locked in the guest room, scouring through every photo album from the last 12 years. I scrutinized every single image frame by frame, watching Anan transform from a tiny infant in swaddling clothes into a strikingly beautiful young girl. I dug up my own childhood photos for a side-by-side comparison. Not a single feature matched. Then I looked at Joe Rui's photos. Anan's eyes, mouth, and face shape were almost carbon copies of hers. Finally, I pulled out photos of Sun Ping. He was my senior from university, and we had dozens of group photos together. I placed Anan's picture right next to Sun Peng's face. That distinctively upturned nose, the exact way the corners of the mouth curled when smiling, They were identical. My heart began to sink into a dark, bottomless void. I started spiraling through memories of every time Sunpeng visited. He always showed up on Friday nights, bearing gifts of expensive fruit or trendy toys, claiming they were all for An. The moment he walked in, Jo Rui would light up with joy, personally slaving over the stove to cook a feast of his favorite dishes. Whenever the three of us sat at that dinner table, they seemed to have an endless stream of things to discuss. From university nostalgia to the latest office scandals, they never stopped. If I ever tried to interject with a comment, they'd offer a brief dismissive response, before diving right back into their own private world. I used to tell myself I was just being paranoid. I thought, they're cousins. It's only natural for them to be close. I was buried in work, suffocating under pressure. And I wasn't much of a talker anyway. I figured it was good that Sunpeng was there to keep her entertained. God, I was such a pathetic fool. I recall the day In-an was born 5 years ago. I was pacing like a madman outside the delivery room, and Sunpeng was right there too. He claimed he was just passing by the hospital and heard Jo Rui was in labor. So he stopped in when the nurse brought the baby out. I was the first to lunge forward, with Sunpeng hovering right over my shoulder, as he stared at An in her swaddling clothes. The spark in his eyes was more intense than mine, the actual father. Congratulations, Junior. She's a stunning little girl. As those words left his mouth, his gaze remained fixed on An, never once meeting mine. I even remember coming home early from work once. I opened the door to find Sunpeng and Jo Rui on the sofa. They were leaning in incredibly close to one another. Jo Rui was in tears, and Sunpeng had his arm around her, whispering comfort. The moment they saw me, they jolted apart like they'd been electrocuted. This K-drama is just so heart-wrenching, she sobbed. Yeah, exactly. Women are just so emotional. And I bought it, like a total idiot. I believed them time and time again. That $2 million tip-off? Only those two could have concocted such a venomous scheme. They assumed once I was locked behind bars, I'd never walk free again, my house, my life savings, and my social standing would all naturally fall into their hands. They wouldn't even need to deal with a messy divorce. A convict's wife raising a stepchild, while relying on her cousin for support. What a touching little fairy tale. I packed away every single photograph, grabbed my phone, and called a friend who works as a private eye. I need you to dig into someone for me. Who's Sunpeng? And my wife, Jo Rui. What am I looking for? Their hotel check-in records from 5 years ago until today. Every financial transaction between them. I want everything, no matter how small. Yeezy. Are you absolutely sure? Positive. Understood. I'll have the intel for you in 3 days. After I hung up the phone, a bone-chilling cold washed over my entire body. Day 7, the day the truth would be revealed. I took a leave of absence from work, but as I prepared to head out, Jo Rui blocked the doorway. She was already dressed and ready to go. I'm coming with you. No need. I have to be there. I need to witness the truth. With my own eyes, she was hysterical, acting as if she were certain the outcome would favor her. Perhaps she thought that by acting righteous enough, she could somehow rewrite reality. I didn't bother arguing. The drive was dead silent. At the identification center, I provided my name at the desk. The staff member handed me a manila envelope. It felt incredibly thin, yet it was so heavy I nearly lost my grip. Jo Rui lunged to snatch it, but I dodged her easily. I gripped that envelope, my fingertips turning ice cold. My hands were shaking, completely beyond my control. Jo Rui noticed my trembling. Are you scared now? Zhao Yi, it's not too late to turn back and apologize to us. Do that and I'll act like this never happened. I ignored her entirely. With trembling hands, I ripped the envelope open. There was only a single sheet of paper inside. I pulled it out, my gaze darting straight to the bottom. Identification conclusion. That single line of bold black text felt like a red-hot blade plunging into my retinas. Based on the DNA analysis results, Zhao Yi is excluded as the biological father of Zhao Anan. Excluded. Ah! My brain erupted into a deafening roar, turning everything into a total white void. The world fell into a terrifying silence. I couldn't hear whatever Jo Rui was screeching, nor could I feel the beat of my own heart. I stood there like a hollowed-out marionette, staring blankly at that piece of paper. I have no idea how much time passed before Jo Rui's voice finally pierced my ears again. She was practically screaming at the top of her lungs. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible, Thus. This report is a fake. You people forged these results, Imiso. She stormed toward the counter, slamming her palms against the desk, while shrieking at the bewildered staff members. I slowly folded the report with deliberate care, sliding it back into the manila envelope, and tucked it into the inner pocket of my jacket, right against my chest. That spot was supposed to be warm, but that single sheet of paper turned it cold as iron. I turned around to face her. Jo Rui was still causing a scene, acting like a total lunatic. I marched over and clamped my hand onto her arm. Zhao Yi, this is a lie. You have to believe me, there's been a massive mistake. Let's go home. I uttered only 3 words. My voice was eerily calm. So calm it didn't even sound like my own. I dragged her toward the exit. She was no match for my strength. I hauled her all the way out of the hospital and shoved her into the car. I ignited the engine and pulled onto the road. Sitting in the passenger seat, she continued to sob, repeating that it was impossible over and over. Chao Yi, believe me, you're the only man I've ever been with. 6,000 a month, first and last plus deposit. The first time you paid 36,000 up front. Those details were merely a fraction of the intel my private investigator friend had sent over. Every single transaction was laid bare. Zhou Rui's eyes were now filled with nothing but pure terror. She stared at me as if she were looking at a demon. You investigated me. The moment you filed that false report against me, you should have known this day would come. My phone vibrated. I picked it up to check. It was an encrypted file, sent by my friend. The subject line read, "Everything you asked for." I answered the incoming call. Easy, I sent the files. It's enough to bury those two lowlifes for good. Hotel logs, bank transfers, and even screenshots of their private chats. I had someone recover the deleted text they talk about framing you. Take a look for yourself. I appreciate the help. I ended the call, shoving the phone screen toward Zhou Rui to flash the file name. She couldn't make out the specific details, but she definitely understood that title. Her psychological defenses crumbled instantly. Zhao Yi de. I'm sorry. I was so wrong, please. Oh, just forgive me this once. Let's just go home and forget this, okay? We can't get a divorce, oh. Think about An. She can't grow up without a father. I pulled the paternity report from my inner pocket, unfolding it and thrusting it directly before her eyes. She looked down at the words, reading the line excluding me as An's biological father. Her sobbing stopped abruptly, as if an invisible hand had seized her by the throat. The car fell into a deathly suffocating silence. Right at that moment, a black Audi A6 pulled into the parking lot. It came to a halt just a short distance away. The driver's side door swung open, and Sunpunk stepped out from the vehicle. He was dressed in casual loungewear, clutching several plastic grocery bags in his hands. I could see fresh vegetables and cuts of meat inside. He was even humming a cheerful little tune. He locked the car with a click, glancing up toward a specific window in Building 15. A warm, cozy welcome home smile plastered on his face. He was looking directly toward Unit 1103. Zhou Rui saw him too. She stared at that man, at those grocery bags in his hands, and the look of pure domestic satisfaction on his face. Finally, she buried her face in her knees, letting out a muffled primal sob like a wounded beast. I drove us back to the apartment. Zhou Rui didn't utter another syllable the entire way. She remained huddled in the passenger seat, looking like a discarded soulless ragdoll. Once we arrived, I parked the car in its usual spot. She didn't move until I said, "Get out." She trailed behind me into the building, into the elevator, and back out onto our floor. I twisted the key and pushed the door open. Anan heard the noise and came racing out from her room. "Mommy!" she cried, lunging toward Zhou Rui. Zhou Rui's entire frame went rigid, and she instinctively flinched away, and then stumbled, catching only thin air, standing rooted to the spot. Her wide eyes were brimming with confusion and hurt. She looked up at Zhou Rui, then glanced tentatively at me, before cautiously retreating back into her bedroom and clicking the door shut. I swapped into my slippers, walked into the living room, and sank into the sofa. "Sit down." Zhou Rui moved like a broken marionette, dropping into the single armchair across from me. I didn't bother heading to the study for my laptop. Instead, I fired up the living room's like smart TV. I mirrored my phone screen onto the massive display. The first image was a DNA paternity report, coal black ink on stark white paper. The conclusion was undeniably crystal clear. Let's start with this. This girl is not my daughter. Therefore, after the divorce, custody remains entirely with you. I won't be providing a single cent in child support, and there is absolutely no reason for visitation rights. Zhou Rui's body swayed as if she might collapse. I remained completely expressionless. I tapped the remote to go to the next slide. A spreadsheet filled the screen. It was the asset manifest I had prepared. Point 2 assets. This 180 square meter apartment was purchased by me in full before we wed. The deed bears only my name. It is strictly premarital property. You have no claim to it. As for the car, that $500,000 vehicle is registered to me. It was bought using my personal premarital savings, making it solely my property as well. You won't get a piece of the savings either. What's in our respective names stays there. I've already scrutinized your accounts. Aside from what your parents gave you, there's the money from Sunpeng, the $320,000 he's been funneling to you since the year before last. You used your mother's bank card as a middleman, thinking I'd never trace the funds that prove your adultery. I will be submitting every single transaction to the court, with every sentence I uttered. Zhou Rui's face drained of more color. I clicked to the next slide. A series of photographs began to cycle across the screen. Snapshots of her and Sunpeng at various hotel entrances and parking lots. Photos of them locked in passionate embraces and kisses. The time and location for each were meticulously documented. Point 3 grounds for divorce. adultery, and maintaining a long-term illicit relationship. The evidence here is ironclad and irrefutable, but the most critical point of all is that you, Zhou Rui, conspired with Sun Ping to commit malicious perjury. You framed me with the intent of putting me behind bars, just so you could seize every single asset I owned. This isn't just a simple affair. This is a serious criminal offense. Screenshots of their WeChat conversations flashed onto the screen. My husband seems a bit suspicious lately. What should I do? There's nothing to fear. Just stick to the plan. Once he's locked away, you and Anand will finally be all mine. That $2 million deposit slip, will they really believe it? As long as you swear on your life that you saw it with your own eyes, they won't let him go. They won't let him off the hook. As long as he's under state control, we've already won. Every word was a final nail in her coffin. Zhou Rui stared at the television screen, watching the hideous truth of her dialogue with Sun Ping unfold. Finally, she completely snapped. It wasn't like that. He forced my hand. Sun Ping coerced me into everything. He swore that he loved me. He told me you'd only treat me worse over time. He said he was the only one who could give me happiness. Reporting you, that was his scheme too. He promised that if you were out of the picture, we could be together forever. She desperately tried to wash her hands of the guilt. Even at this ultimate moment of truth, she was still putting on a performance. I killed the power to the TV. A deafening silence reclaimed the living room. I rose and retrieved 2 pre-printed documents from the study, flinging them onto the coffee table right before her eyes. One was a formal divorce settlement. The other was a voluntary waiver of all marital assets. Sign them. We'll head to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow for a clean break. I won't pursue criminal charges for your perjury, and I'll even spare you a shred of your dignity by letting you leave with absolutely nothing. That is my final offer. If you refuse, then every scrap of this evidence, including Anand's paternity report, will be copied 100 times. One goes to the court, and the rest go directly to your parents. To your parents. To every single one of our relatives. And to both my office and Sun Ping's workplace. I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of woman you are, and exactly what kind of scumbag Sun Ping is. By then, you won't just be losing money and a house. You'll lose every last ounce of your human dignity. Zhou Rui stared down at the documents on the table, then slowly lifted her gaze to meet mine. Her eyes shifted from venomous spite to desperate pleading, until finally they faded into a hollow dead gray. The next morning, I was up at the break of dawn. Zhou Rui hadn't slept a wink. She was still perched on the sofa, like a lifeless, weathered statue. The 2 documents remained exactly where I'd left them, completely untouched by her. I didn't bother pressuring her. I washed up, changed it into my suit, and prepared for the more critical tasks ahead. Before stepping out, I shot her a final glance. I'm giving you 24 hours to think it over. I expect to see your signature by tomorrow morning. With that, I turned my back on the house. I didn't head to the office. Instead, I drove straight to a prestigious law firm. I had spent those 7 days scouting for the best, the city's most ruthless matrimonial lawyer, Zhang Chengye. I met with attorney Zhang exactly at our scheduled time. He was in his mid-40s, wearing gold-rimmed spectacles, and radiating an aura of sharp professional competence. Greetings, Mr. Zhao, attorney Zhang. We exchanged a firm handshake. We took our seats, tension thick in the air. I skipped the pleasantries and got straight to the point, sliding a USB drive from my briefcase across the mahogany desk. Attorney Zhang said, I'm filing for divorce. Everything you need, every shred of proof is on this drive. Zhang nodded solemnly, plugging the drive into his workstation. He opened the folders, scrolling through the contents one by one, from the DNA results to the exhaustive asset manifest, down to the repulsive photos and incriminating chat logs. His expression shifted from professional calm to a flicker of shock, finally hardening into a look of absolute gravity. He examined every detail with surgical precision, taking a full 30 minutes to absorb the betrayal. Once he finished, he removed his glasses, massaging the bridge of his nose. Mr. Zhao, I'll be blunt with you. I've navigated hundreds of messy divorce cases. But this is the first time I've seen evidence this devastatingly complete. This cache of proof is more than enough to leave your wife defenseless in a court of law. Walking away with nothing isn't just likely, it's guaranteed. Then I'm placing my future in your hands. My demands are non-negotiable. First, I want this marriage dissolved immediately. Second, she doesn't get to touch a single red cent. Third, custody of Anand stays entirely with her. I refuse to have any further connection to that child. That won't be an issue. Legally, since she isn't your biological offspring, you have zero obligations toward her. Regarding assets, your wife is the party at major fault, especially with her calculated attempt to seize your fortune. Your premarital assets are bulletproof, and the division of communal property will swing heavily in your favor. We finalized the retainer fees, and I inked my name on the contract. As I stood up to take my leave, one final burning question crossed my mind. Attorney Zhang, legally speaking, what can I do to the man? Zhang paused, contemplating the weight of the situation. Simple adultery is notoriously difficult. for the legal system to prosecute. However, if you possess undeniable evidence proving he orchestrated and led the conspiracy to frame you, we can absolutely hold him criminally liable. However, based on these chat logs you've provided, it's clear they were incredibly cunning. Most of their arrangements were made verbally. Constructing a foolproof chain of evidence will be difficult compared to pursuing criminal charges. Targeting his workplace and his reputation might be a far more direct and devastating way to strike back. His advice aligned perfectly with my own dark thoughts. I understand completely. Thank you for your expertise, Attorney Zhang. As I stepped out of the law firm, I felt half the weight on my chest finally lift. The legal arsenal for my revenge was fully loaded. Now it was time to open a second front. Standing on the curb, I whipped out my phone. I didn't call Zhou Rui. Instead, I dialed Director Zhang from my office. He picked up almost instantly. Xiao Zhao, how are you holding up during your break? I appreciate the concern, Director Zhang. I've recovered quite well. When would it be convenient for you? I'm eager to return to my post as soon as possible. There was a brief, stunned silence on the other end, followed by a hearty chuckle. Excellent. You're welcome back anytime. Your office is. I've had Xiao Li keep it reserved for you. It's being cleaned every single day. Thank you, Director. Regarding the meeting you mentioned to clear my name... yes. Should we keep it small or... Actually, Director, I believe we should make it a grander affair. I watched the endless stream of traffic rushing by, my gaze sharpening with cold intent. I'd prefer if every mid-level cadre in the Bureau attended. After all, the impact of this scandal was significant. I want my exoneration to be witnessed by as many people as possible. I wasn't just after a divorce anymore. I was going to reclaim everything stolen from me, reputation status, and most importantly, justice. I won't let a single thing slide. The next morning, when I stepped out of the guest room, Zhou Rui was still perched on that sofa. She hadn't shifted an inch all night. Those two documents still sat mockingly before her. On the divorce papers, Zhou Rui had finally scrawled her name. The handwriting was crooked and shaky, as if she had expended every last drop of her strength. I strode over, snatched the documents, and scrutinized them. The asset waiver was signed as well. She spoke, her voice rasping like coarse sandpaper. I retrieved the other document, noting her signature accompanied by a crimson thumbprint. Perfect. I tucked the paperwork securely into my briefcase. Get your ID, your household register, and the marriage certificate ready. Meet me at the Civil Affairs Bureau at 9. I didn't spare her a glance. I turned on my heel, ready to depart. Zhao Yi, she called out to me from behind, halting my steps. Anan? Is she truly Sun Peng's daughter? I couldn't believe my ears. Her voice held a trace of doubt, a flicker of pathetic hope. I nearly burst out laughing. Even after reaching this rock bottom, she was actually still clinging to her delusions. Or perhaps she was desperately searching for a justification, trying to prove she hadn't been playing me from the very start. That's a question you should be asking Sun Peng. I yanked the door open and vanished. The sunlight was blindingly bright outside. I drove straight to the office. It was exactly 8:30. Most of my colleagues were just arriving at their desks when they crossed paths with me in the corridor. Their expressions were a messy cocktail of emotions. There was pity, morbid curiosity, and cold alienation. I ignored every single one of them, marching directly toward my own office. The door was locked. I fished out my key and twisted the bolt. The room was immaculate, not a speck of dust in sight. Director Zhang hadn't been feeding me lines. He really had made Xiaoli clean it every day. I took my seat and fired up the PC to tackle the mountain of backlogged emails. Suddenly, Director Zhang's secretary rapped on the door. Section Chief Zhao. The director requests your presence in the grand conference hall. I rose to my feet, straightening my collar with deliberate poise, and followed him out. As I pushed open the conference room doors, Director Zhang spotted me and beckoned with his hand. Come, eat. Zhao Yi, take a seat right here. He gestured to the prestigious spot right beside him. I walked over and sat down. I could feel the weight of countless stares from behind, piercing my back like intense searchlights. In the far corner of the room, I spotted Sun Peng. His head was hung low, not daring to meet my gaze. He looked like a completely different person compared to the day I was hauled away. The meeting commenced. Without any useless small talk, Director Zhang cut straight to the chase. He began with a few brief remarks regarding the absolute necessity of discipline and integrity within our unit. Then his tone shifted sharply. A while ago, an incident occurred within this bureau. Our colleague, Comrade Zhao Yi, was a target of a formal whistleblowing report, accusing him of serious financial misconduct. The conference hall became so quiet you could hear a pin drop. A special task force was assembled, subjecting Comrade Zhao Yi to a grueling 3-month investigation. Director Zhang's voice was stern and gravelly. I have gathered everyone here today to officially announce the final conclusions of that inquiry. Regarding the allegation that Comrade Zhao Yi accepted a $2 million bribe, it is a complete and utter fabrication. This was a case of malicious perjury. We are here to vindicate Comrade Zhao Yi and fully restore his untarnished reputation. He set the documents down and turned his gaze toward me. On behalf of the Bureau, we failed to protect one of our own cadres, allowing you to suffer this gross injustice. With those words, he stood up and gave me a deep, formal bow. An audible gasp rippled through the entire room. Director, please, this isn't on you or the Bureau. I stood up instantly to support him. Director Zhang straightened up and gripped my hand firmly. You are a good man. He turned back to face the stunned audience. Comrade Zhao Yi is the backbone of our operations. For 15 years, he has been a model of diligence, keeping his hands clean and his heart pure. This ordeal has caused him immense personal, and his family have suffered an unimaginable amount of trauma. I expect everyone in this bureau to take this as a grave warning. We must steadfastly support and trust our comrades, and never be swayed by malicious rumors. The applause started thin and scattered, but quickly swelled into a thunderous ovation. I sensed the collective gaze of my colleagues all shifting. Pity was being replaced by genuine respect and admiration. At that very moment, my tarnished reputation was polished anew. Director Zhang invited me to say a few words. I stepped up to the microphone, surveying the sea of people below, until my eyes locked onto Sun Ping's deathly pale face. Our gazes collided in mid-air for a fleeting second, and he jerked his head down as if he'd been burned. I gripped the microphone, my voice resonating with absolute clarity and poise. I am deeply grateful for the organization's trust, and for the leadership's unwavering concern. I've done a lot of soul-searching over these past 3 months. As a veteran who has served this unit for 15 years, I have always stood by one simple truth. A straight tree fears no crooked shadow. I put my faith in the organization, and believed the law would eventually grant me justice. Today, that justice has finally been served. I am vindicated, so. But there are things that cannot simply be swept under the rug. My tone turned razor-sharp and cold. Perjury and framing are not just attacks on me personally. They are a direct provocation to our entire cadre, and a blatant desecration of our organizational discipline. As for the shadowy coward lurking in the dark, the one who used such despicable means to destroy a man's life. I paused for dramatic effect, my gaze cutting like a blade, as it swept over Sun Ping once more. He buried his face even lower, his shoulders trembling uncontrollably. I hope the organization investigates this to the very end, showing absolutely no mercy to the culprit. As I finished my piece, the conference hall erupted into a roar of applause. This time, every single clap was laden with genuine conviction. Once the meeting adjourned, the chaos in my world finally reached a peaceful standstill. Walking through the Bureau's corridors, everyone I encountered made it a point to greet me warmly. Welcome back, Section Chief Zhao. You've been through so much, Section Chief. Their faces were plastered with a perfectly curated mask of concern and warmth, as if those 3 agonizing months of isolation and suspicion never even happened. I acknowledged each of them in kind, keeping my expression utterly stoic. I had barely returned to my desk and settled into my chair when my phone began to vibrate. It was an unrecognized number. I picked up. Zhao Yi, I'm at the tea house right across from your office. We need to talk. It was Sun Ping. His voice was thick with exhaustion and sheer terror. I have absolutely nothing to say to you. No, please, I'm begging you. Just 10 minutes, love. He sounded like he was on the verge of sobbing. Fine. I cut the call, stood up, and made my way downstairs with calculated leisure. The tea house was nearly deserted. Sun Ping had retreated to the most secluded booth in the back. When he saw me, he looked like a man greeting his savior, while simultaneously staring into the eyes of the Grim Reaper. His face was a grotesque mess of conflicting emotions. The tea in front of him remained completely untouched. I sat down, poured myself a cup, and said, Speak. Brother Yi, no. Section Chief Zhao. He was babbling incoherently. I heard everything you said at the meeting today. I know I messed up. I'm so sorry. I truly realize my mistake now. With a sudden heavy thud, he actually slid right off his seat and dropped to his knees before me. I leaned back casually, distancing myself from his pathetic display. Just say what you have to say. Spare me the theatrics. The waiter glanced over. Wearing a look of pure confusion, Sun Ping scrambled back up in a panic and took his seat again. Chief Zhao, that incident, the formal report against you, it really wasn't my brainchild. It was Zhou Rui, it was my sister-in-law. She's the one who insisted on doing it. She said that only if you were locked away could she finally be free of you. The script was beginning again, the exact same performance Zhou Rui gave, shifting the blame onto the other partner. I watched him in total silence, not uttering a single word. My quietness only served to amplify his sheer terror. Seriously, I swear on my life. I tried to talk her out of it, Tats. I told her it was way too risky and completely immoral. But she wouldn't listen to reason. She was dead set on destroying you. He raised his hand as if making a solemn vow to the heavens. Is that so? I reached into my briefcase and pulled out my smartphone. I didn't even bother unlocking it. I simply turned the standby screen toward him. The wallpaper was a photo I had just specifically set. It was him and Joe Rui right outside that rented apartment, locked in a passionate embrace and kiss. It was a still I'd captured from the video my friend provided. High definition, crystal clear. Sunpung's eyes were pinned to the screen like a deer in headlights. The color drained from his face even faster than it had in the meeting room. His lips quivered, desperately trying to speak, but he couldn't make a sound. Do you want me to show you something else? Maybe your private chat history, like the part where you plotted to frame me, siphoned off my assets, and planned to make your cousin-in-law rot in prison with nothing. Sunpung's entire body began to shake violently. Massive beads of cold sweat poured down from his forehead. Or maybe we should talk about Anan. I dropped the final crushing sledgehammer. You really adore her, don't you? You bought her the most expensive toys every time you visited. You were even more hyped than I was the day she was born. I'm just dying to know. In what capacity exactly were you caring for my daughter? Shut up, just stop. Sunpung finally reached his breaking point. He clutched his head with both hands, letting out a low agonized groan. I'm begging you, don't say another word. I tucked my phone away and took a slow sip of my tea. It had already gone ice cold. Sunpung Sao. We were brothers in that university once. I actually believed you were my true friend, that you were part of my family. My voice was barely a whisper, yet every word struck like a heavy mallet against his soul. You incinerated 15 years of my memories, shattered every ounce of trust I had in family, and attempted to ruin my entire life. Xiao Yi! I'm a monster. What? Worse than a beast, he choked out, lifting his head, his face a chaotic mess of tears. I leaned forward, closing the distance between us, and in a low whisper meant only for our ears, I said, you have two paths now. One, I hand all this evidence to your superiors, filing a false report against a state official. You know exactly what that crime entails. Your downfall will be 100 times more brutal than mine. 2, before the sun rises tomorrow. Isate. Submit your formal resignation to the Bureau. Then write an exhaustive confession. Detail exactly how you conspired with Joe Rui and document every step of your treacherous plan. Write it all down, every disgusting detail. Sign your name to it and hand it over to me. Once those 2 tasks are complete, you can get lost. Get out of this city and never dare to show your face before me again. I leaned back into my chair. Choose. Sunpung slumped into the booth, his face the color of cold ash. He knew he had no choice, compared to total public disgrace and rotting in a prison cell. Vanishing quietly was the only lifeline he had left to grasp. Stepping out of the tea house, I glanced at my watch. It was 8:50 a.m., 10 minutes until our scheduled appointment. I drove toward the Civil Affairs Bureau at a leisurely pace. After parking the car, I walked toward the entrance. Joe Rui was already there waiting. She was draped in a drab gray trench coat, her hair pinned up in a messy, careless bun. She wore no makeup, looking pale and completely haggard. She clutched a small canvas bag, containing every document we needed for today. When she spotted me, her gaze instinctively darted away. She didn't utter a single word. I wasn't in the mood for small talk either. We were like 2 strangers in a queue, walking in one after the other without a glance. We pulled a ticket and waited for our number. The entire ordeal was shrouded in a heavy, dead silence. All around us were couples drifting in and out. Some were beaming with joy, ready to claim their marriage certificates. Others wore expressions of pure misery, there to process the end of their lives together. Our cold silence felt eerily out of place in such a crowd. Finally, our number flashed on the screen. We walked to the counter and took our seats. Are both parties here for a voluntary divorce? Yes. Is the division of assets mutually agreed upon? What about child custody? Everything has been settled. The terms are all specified in the agreement. The clerk picked up our divorce settlement and scanned through it with a practiced eye. When she reached the part where the wife waives all assets, and the clause stating the child is solely the mother's responsibility, with no support from the husband, she looked up at Joe Rui with a look of sheer disbelief. Joe Rui buried her face even deeper into her chest. The clerk didn't push for answers. It wasn't her place to judge another's family drama. Fill these out. We both fell into a muted trance while filling the forms. I filled mine out in a flash. Name, Zhao Yi. Ethnicity, Han. Under the reason for divorce section, I wrote only 2 words. Irreconcilable differences. I granted her that final shred of public dignity. Forms filed, photos taken. When the heavy steel seal slammed onto the red divorce certificates, I saw Joe Rui's entire body recoil from the sound. It was finally over. Done. I snatched my copy of the certificate, stood up and turned to walk away. No farewells, no parting words. As I stepped out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, the sunlight was blinding. It felt as if a 1,000-pound weight had been lifted from my soul. Joe Rui followed me out onto the sidewalk. Zhao Yi, I stopped, and looked back at her one last time. This was the final exchange we would ever have as a couple. Can I go back? Just to pack mine and Anand's things? You have exactly 2 hours. I'll wait for you downstairs once we're home. At the building entrance, I didn't bother going up. I leaned against the car and lit a cigarette. It was the first one I'd touched in 3 months. As the smoke swirled around me, My mind became incredibly sharp and clear. In less than an hour, Joroi descended from the apartment. She was hauling two massive suitcases, with Anand trailing silently beside her. The little girl clutched the edge of her mother's coat, peering at me with a timid, frightened expression, her eyes puffy and crimson, from what was clearly a long crying fit. I crushed the cigarette butt under my heel, walked toward them, and held out my hand. Give me the car keys. Technically, that vehicle was in her name, but it was purchased entirely with my hard-earned money. The settlement made it clear it belonged to me. She fished them out of her bag and handed them over. Where do you plan on going now? Back to my mother's. What about Sun Peng Set in this? He transferred a sum of money to me this morning, and then he blocked me on everything. He said he's leaving the city for good. I felt absolutely nothing in my heart. That was simply the price he had to pay. Good luck with that. I left her with those 4 cold words, yanked the car door open and climbed inside. I fired up the engine, and the car glided out of the residential complex. In the rearview mirror, the mother and daughter grew smaller, until they were nothing more than a blurred speck. The first thing I did upon returning was call a locksmith. Hello, is this the master locksmith? I need to change every lock in the house. Give me the highest level of security available. 30 minutes later, the locksmith arrived at my doorstep, listening to the high-pitched whine of the electric drill and smelling the sharp scent of machine oil. I knew the last lingering trace of anyone else's presence was being purged from my home. After seeing the locksmith out, I stood in the center of the vacant living room. Finally, this space belonged entirely to me again. I shed my jacket and stepped into the study. I poured myself a glass of neat whiskey. My phone suddenly vibrated. A notification for a file transfer popped up. I tapped it open. It was a Word document from Sun Peng titled Confession. I opened the file, absorbing every single word on the screen. It was a meticulous log of how he had lusted after my wife, how he realized Anand was his biological daughter, the ways he systematically seduced Joroi, and how they ultimately orchestrated that venomous frame-up. His words were dripping with false sincerity and pathetic newfound regret. I finished reading and clicked Save, dragging the document into an encrypted folder. This was my final ultimate insurance policy. I carried my glass to the window, watching the city lights begin to flicker on below. 1,000 windows lit up in the twilight. The city remained a bustling river of traffic, as if nothing had changed at all. Yet my world had been completely annihilated, only for me to rebuild it with my own 2 hands. I took a slow sip of the spirit. The spicy liquid scorched my throat, with a lingering fiery heat. I had won this war. The victory was clean, and the triumph was absolute. Yet there was no wild euphoria in my chest, only a vast ocean-like stillness. The revenge was complete. Tomorrow the sun would rise as usual, and my new life was only just beginning. The following morning I awoke to a profound absolute silence. No more sounds of Anand's morning tantrums. No more of Jorui's clattering in the kitchen, and no more of the maid's cautious tiptoeing footsteps. The entire 180 square meter apartment felt as empty as a massive hollow echo chamber. I lay there in bed, eyes wide open, staring up at the ceiling for a very, very long time. The suffocating tension of the vendetta had vanished, but there was no surge of post-victory joy. Instead, a colossal emptiness set in as the dust finally settled. I had taken just half a month to cut through the Gordian knot of my life, severing every rotten root from the past 15 years. Now I stood upon a pristine, cleared-out ruin, freed from the disgusting people and events that once plagued me. But simultaneously, I was left with absolutely nothing. I rolled out of bed to freshen up, then boiled a single bowl of noodles for myself, just a humble bowl of plain Yangchun noodles. I added only a pinch of salt and a few drops of soy sauce. After finishing my meal, I scrubbed the bowl until it was spotless, and tucked it back into the cupboard. Then I reached for my phone, and dialed my mother's number. It rang for an eternity before she finally picked up. Hello, Yeezy? Mom, it's me. Are you alright? Did that meeting at your office happen yet, so? They didn't give you a hard time, did they? On the day I was hauled away, the news had reached my parents like wildfire. The elderly couple was so frantic they nearly collapsed from illness. For 3 months, they pulled every string imaginable, pleading with countless people. Yet they weren't even allowed to see my face. I could only imagine the hell they endured just to survive. I'm fine, oh? Mom, it's all in the past now. The Bureau held a meeting yesterday, and Director Zhang personally cleared my name. Thank goodness, thank goodness. You've suffered so much, my child, because of your situation, Tay. Your father's hair has turned half white from worry. A sharp pang of guilt twisted in my chest. Your dad is at the park playing chess. I didn't tell him that you called, fearing he'd get too worked up again. Mom, I have something to tell you. I paused for a heartbeat, carefully organizing my words. Jorei and I got a divorce yesterday. The other end of the line went deathly silent. What did you say, a divorce? But why? Is it because she was the one who reported you? Yeezy, listen to your mother. No grudge between husband and wife should last forever. She might have just been confused for a moment. Mom, I didn't want to break the news about Anan, how she isn't my flesh and blood, and burden them with such a scandal. I feared the shock would be too much for them to handle, in their eyes. Enin was their one and only granddaughter, the absolute apple of their eye for 5 straight years. Exposing the truth to them would simply be too cruel. She had been seeing someone behind my back for a long time. Reporting me was a calculated move they planned together. They wanted me behind bars, just so they could be together. The other end of the line plunged back into a deathly silence. This time, I could clearly hear my mother's heavy, ragged breathing. That treacherous woman! How dare she! How did our Zhao family ever wrong her? You treated her with nothing but kindness. How could she commit such a beastly, subhuman act? It's all over now, Mom. The divorce is finalized, and she left with absolutely nothing. From now on, we have 0 ties to that family. But what about Anand, the Sasot? Who does Anand stay with? If she goes with her, that's unacceptable. Anand is a granddaughter of the Zhao family. She can't be raised by a woman like that. Mom, I've already made my final decision on this. You and Dad, just act as if that granddaughter no longer exists. As those words left my lips, my heart felt as though a fist had violently squeezed it. But a sharp, quick cut is better than a lingering ache. My mother fell silent on the other end. She's a perceptive woman. She likely picked up on something in my tone. A deep-seated, unshakable resolve that could not be moved. She didn't press me any further. I understand, Yeezy. Just take care of yourself. Whenever you feel homesick, just come back to us, okay? I will, Mom. I hung up the phone, feeling as though I'd just survived another brutal skirmish. I sat on the sofa for an eternity, until the sunlight finally spilled through the window, casting a faint, deceptive warmth across my face. That afternoon, I returned to the office. Director Zhang summoned me into his private quarters. He personally brewed a pot of tea for me. Chao Yi, have you settled your personal affairs at home? Everything is settled, Director. I appreciate your concern, Director Zhang. He nodded slowly and let out a heavy sigh. Regarding Zhou Rui, sigh. I personally witnessed your wedding ceremony. I never imagined things would escalate to this point. As for Sun Peng, he submitted his resignation yesterday morning, claiming family emergencies required his immediate return to his hometown. Understood. My face remained an emotionless mask. Sun Peng's written confession was locked securely in my drawer. For his sake, he had better stay out of my sight for the rest of his life. Director Zhang studied me, his gaze flickering with a mix of admiration and approval. Zhao Yi, the fact that you've bounced back so rapidly is truly impressive. To endure such a massive injustice, and still maintain this level of cold composure, while handling everything with such tactical grace. To be honest, I find it quite admirable. This entire ordeal was a catastrophic disaster for you, but it served as the ultimate trial by fire. His tone shifted to a more serious note. The city is about to launch a massive smart city initiative, which requires intense coordination across multiple departments. It's a tough nut to crack, a real challenge. I've already recommended you to the higher-ups to lead the charge and assemble a specialized task force. My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just another project. This was a definitive signal. The unmistakable sign of the organization placing its full bet on me. If you knock this project out of the park, it will be a total game changer for your career advancement. Director Zhang gave me a look heavy with hidden meaning. So what do you say? Do you have the confidence to pull this off, you wussig? I stood up straight and gave Director Zhang a solemn, resolute nod. Count me in. The preparations for the new project were chaotic and endless. I funneled every ounce of my energy into the work. Endless meetings, exhaustive research, drafting complex proposals, and mediating between friction-filled departments. I stayed at the office until the late hours of every night. This relentless grind acted like a potent medicine, leaving me no time to dwell on the toxic wreckage of my past. It also felt as though I'd finally rediscovered my life's true north. Everything seemed to be gradually falling back into place. However, just as I thought I had cut ties with the past for good, a single phone call shattered my newfound tranquility. The caller was my former mother-in-law. Seeing that specific number on the screen, my first instinct was to kill the call immediately. But after a brief hesitation, I picked up. Zhao Yi, you absolute monster. Do you have even a shred of conscience left? The second the call connected, a torrential flood of vitriol and curses came crashing down. Do you have any idea how much you've ruined our Zhou Rui? You divorced her and left her without a single cent. How could your heart be so incredibly cold? She bore you a daughter. She slaved away for you like a beast of burden for years. And this is how you repay her, my former mother-in-law's voice was so shrill it felt like it was piercing my eardrums. I held the phone a few inches away from my head, listening to her rant in total silence, only when she had exhausted her breath and began to gasp for air did I bring the device back to my ear. Are you quite finished? You owe our family an explanation. You must compensate Zhou Rui with the apartment. The car, the savings, you must hand over half. Otherwise, we'll raise hell at your office. will expose you for abandoning your wife and child. Is that so? Are you absolutely certain you want to know the why behind my actions? There was a sudden stunned silence on the other end. Isn't it just because she reported you? She only did that for your own good. She was simply manipulated by others. It seems Joe Rui hasn't been entirely honest with you. I walked to the window, watching the city traffic flow below. Then allow me to enlighten you with two simple facts. First, your daughter and her secret lover. A man named Sun Peng meticulously conspired to frame me, with the sole intent of seeing me rot in a prison cell, so they could legally seize every bit of my wealth. This wasn't some momentary lapse in judgment. This was a cold, calculated crime. Second, I paused for dramatic effect, pronouncing each word with chilling precision. Your daughter gave birth to another man's child, and let me play the fool for 5 long years. I let the weight of that truth sink in. I spent 5 years raising the granddaughter you love so much, only to find she doesn't share a single drop of Zhao blood. As I finished, the other end of the line fell into a deathly silence. I could vividly imagine that old woman's face right now, wondering exactly what expression she was wearing. Was it pure shock? Was it burning shame, white-hot rage, or cold indifference? A full minute passed in absolute silence, before a sharp clatter echoed through the speaker, the sound of her phone hitting the floor. Then the connection went dead. I stared at the black screen of my phone, letting out a long, cathartic breath. The final lingering ghost capable of haunting my new life had been successfully exorcised. I opened my contacts list, located the groups for my former in-laws, and decisively hit the delete key. Every single name and number associated with them was purged. From now on, our paths diverged forever. We are strangers in this vast world. That evening, I stayed in and prepared a decadent feast for myself. 4 dishes and a soup, everything I used to crave, but that Joe Rui found too tedious to bother with. The meals she always refused to cook. I uncorked a bottle of fine red wine, poured a generous glass, and sat at my massive dining table, savoring every bite. The house was silent and vast. Yet for the first time, I didn't feel the bite of loneliness. Instead, I felt an unprecedented sense of liberation and ease. I no longer had to accommodate anyone else's whims, nor did I need to mask my true emotions ever again. I was finally just me living for myself. After the meal, I gave the entire apartment a deep, thorough cleaning. Every lingering trace of Joe Rui and An's existence, every remnant of their lives was bagged up and hauled to the trash. The photo albums, the toys, even their old clothes and shoes. As I tossed the final garbage bag into the bin and straightened my back, I felt an incredible weightless buoyancy. Back inside, I drew a steaming hot bath. Soaking in the tub, I actually began to plot out a total renovation for the place. I'd tear out that gaudy, tasteless decor and replace it with the sleek, minimalist style I'd always wanted. I'll transform Annan's old nursery into my own private study and home gym. As these plans swirled in my mind, a laugh actually escaped my lips. It was the first genuine heartfelt smile I'd cracked in months. Time cascaded past at a breakneck speed. In the blink of an eye, another month had vanished. The Smart City project was advancing flawlessly under my meticulous command. The task force I spearheaded operated with lethal efficiency, delivering results so spectacular that they earned several formal commendations from city officials. My prestige within the bureau surged to unprecedented heights. The way my colleagues looked at me shifted from pity and morbid curiosity to a state of pure, unadulterated respect and awe. The whispers about my messy personal life had finally died out completely. My career became the beating heart of my existence, and I found myself absolutely thriving in this new reality. One afternoon, just as I wrapped up a grueling coordination meeting, the director's secretary summoned me to his office. Stepping through the doors, I instantly sensed a change in the atmosphere. The deputy directors were all present. Zhao Yi, take a seat. Director Zhang gestured toward the chair directly across from him, his face wearing that familiar, deeply significant grin. I had a strong inkling of what was coming, yet I kept my expression perfectly stoic. As I lowered myself into the chair, Comrade Zhao Yi, we've called you here today to announce a formal organizational decision. Following a review by the party committee and city approval, it has been decided to appoint you as the deputy director of this bureau, overseeing all operations and information technology development. As he finished, he led the room in a round of applause. The other deputy directors joined in, their faces plastered with congratulatory smiles. Congratulations. A deputy director at your age, truly impressive, Zhao. Even though I had anticipated this move, when the moment finally materialized, my pulse couldn't help but quicken with a surge of adrenaline. From a framed man on the brink of ruin to a section chief facing total career annihilation in just 2 short months, my life had been a violent, high-stakes roller coaster. I am honored by the organization's trust. Thank you, esteemed leaders. I rose and gave everyone a deep, respectful bow. No grandstanding, no over-the-top speeches. Just a moment of raw, sincere gratitude. The official appointment papers were issued shortly after. My workspace was upgraded from a standard cubicle on the 3rd floor to the prestigious deputy director's suite on the 5th. The office was far more spacious and much more secluded. Standing before the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new office, I could overlook the sprawling pulse of the entire city. As the horizon widened before me, my state of mind expanded with it. When work ended that evening, I didn't drive straight home like a creature of habit. Instead, I cruised through the city streets without a destination, finally pulling over at a serene riverside park. I stepped out of the car and took a leisurely stroll along the waterfront promenade. The river breeze swept in, carrying a faint misty scent that brushed coolly against my skin. A cruise ship glided across the dark water, leaving a trail of shimmering ripples in its wake. Across the bank stood the city's glowing CBD, a forest of glittering skyscrapers, ablaze with a million lights, tracing a silhouette of the thriving skyline. I found a quiet bench and sat down, taking in the majestic view. Fragments of the past few months flashed through my mind like a film. The sheer shock of being hauled away, the suffocating weight of the interrogations, the absolute mental collapse upon seeing that DNA report, the cold finality of the confrontation, and the hollow void of the divorce leading to my current peace. It all felt like a surreal, distorted fever dream. But now the nightmare was over. The woman I thought would be my life partner was now a total stranger. The child I believed carried my own blood had vanished into the vast ocean of people. That home built on a foundation of betrayal and lies had been leveled by my own hands and rebuilt from the ground up. I had lost so much, yet I had gained something far more precious. A moment of absolute sobering clarity, and a golden ticket to a new beginning. I have no idea what my future holds, or if I'll ever risk building a new family with someone else. I don't have the answers, and frankly, I don't care to look for them. All I know is that from this moment on, I'm going to make my own life spectacular. I pulled out my phone and saw a notification from the project team sent an hour ago. It was the final iteration of the technical blueprint. I tapped the file open and began scouring every detail with laser focus. As the night deepened and the river breeze grew sharper, my heart felt a glow of warmth and clarity like never before. The past had officially been laid to rest. My new life was setting sail bathed in pure starlight. Life as a deputy director was worlds apart from my old routine. I now had a dedicated driver and a personal secretary. The daily mountain of paperwork was endless, and meetings scaled from local tasks to city-wide strategies. Relentless hustle became the dominant melody of my existence. This high-octane tempo acted like a massive firewall, completely isolating me from the wreckage of my past. I honestly believed my days would continue like this, flowing steadily forward within the powerful current of my work, until my mother's voice crackled through the phone again. "Yizi, have you been doing all right lately?" Her tone carried a hint of hesitant caution. Since our last conversation ended on such a sour note, we hadn't spoken for nearly an entire month. "I'm doing great, Mom. The project is on track. How are you and Dad holding up?" "Yep, thought." I leaned back in my executive chair, staring out at the vast blue sky. "We're fine, but no." She hesitated for a moment. "I went grocery shopping yesterday and ran into one of your former neighbors. You remember Auntie Lee, the one living across from Joe Ruiz?" My heart sank slightly, but I remained dead silent. She told me that Joe Rui is living in total misery right now. After she crawled back to her parents, Yasol, the truth about everything came out. They feel like their family honor has been completely trashed. Her father has her locked inside the house, refusing to let her step foot outside, and he curses at her whenever they cross paths. Her mother spends every waking hour in tears, sobbing about what sins they committed to raise a daughter like her. I listened to the report in silence, my face remaining a total mask of indifference. This was the karma she had rightfully earned. Auntie Lee mentioned, my mother continued. The most heartbreaking part is Anan. The moment I heard that name, my grip on the phone tightened instinctively. That poor child is constantly berated by her grandparents. They call her a burden, a cursed mistake. Jo Rui is too mentally checked out to even care for her. The little girl has wasted away becoming a shadow of herself. She's gone completely silent, just clutching her doll and huddling in the corner all day. Auntie Lee even heard her sobbing in her room a couple of days ago. She was asking her doll if it was because she was a bad girl, that her daddy didn't want her anymore. My mother's voice was now thick with stifled sobs. "Yeezy, I know you despise them now, but the child is completely innocent in all of this. She's only 5 years old. What could she possibly understand? When I think about how vibrant and sweet she used to be." "And now, Mom," I cut her off sharply. My voice was as cold as a block of ice. I rose from my chair, walking toward the window, staring down at the people below who looked as insignificant as ants. That phrase, "Is it because I was bad? So Daddy doesn't want me?" It felt like a white-hot needle, plunging straight into the most vulnerable part of my soul. A sharp, agonizing pain I hadn't felt in a long time. But I couldn't afford to be soft-hearted. I couldn't retreat even a single inch. This conversation ends here. I no longer have any connection to those people. Whether they live or die is of no concern to me. Never mention anything about them to me ever again. Yeezy, if you still consider me your son, then give me your word On the other end of the line, there was a heavy, agonizing silence, followed by a suppressed, weary sigh. I understand. I hung up the phone and stood by the window for an eternity. My mind was flooded with the image of Anand's tear-stained face, that small, confused face full of bewilderment. I truly believed she would be the most precious treasure of my life. I once held her close, taught her how to speak, and took her for walks in the park. I used to hoist her onto my shoulders, listening to her infectious, bubbly giggles. But those warm memories have now transformed into poisoned like blades, shredding my heart until it's raw and bleeding. I squeezed my eyes shut, taking a sharp, heavy breath. When I finally opened them again, my gaze had returned to its usual state of cold, unwavering resolve. I snatched the project proposal off my desk, forcing myself to lock my focus back onto the dense sea of text and complex charts. The past is dead and buried. I refused to let its ghost haunt my future any longer. The Smart City project was finally entering deep, uncharted waters. The most critical component was the cross-departmental security and integration of citywide data. It was a technical nightmare and an administrative minefield. Our internal tech team's capabilities were hitting a ceiling, making it vital to bring in a top-tier external partner. After several rounds of grueling bidding and rigorous vetting, the undisputed titan of the domestic information security sector, Huanyu Tech, emerged as the successful bidder. 1 week later, the inaugural project kickoff was held in our bureau's conference room. Huanyu Tech's squad was remarkably young and radiated high-octane energy. Leading them was a project director named Su Qing. She looked barely 30, clad in a sharp, impeccably tailored black suit. Her long hair was pulled back into a sleek, professional ponytail, her face accented with subtle makeup, and her eyes were bright, piercing, and incredibly sharp. She didn't waste time on empty pleasantries. After a brief intro, she dove straight into the meat of the meeting, when it was our turn to present our preliminary data architecture concept. My subordinate, Section Chief Lee, spoke with flamboyant confidence. Pardon the interruption, Section Chief Lee, but regarding this bidirectional sandbox data exchange model, we believe it harbors a catastrophic logical flaw. The conference room plunged into a sudden, stunned silence. Director Su, this model was built on international gold standards and has undergone multiple rounds of rigorous validation. It's impossible for there to be an issue. The problem isn't the model itself, but the actual application scenario. You've overlooked the system heterogeneity between various departments, as well as the critical issue of permission decay during data cleansing and standardization. Based on your current design, if a single malicious code bypasses the front-end firewall, it can exploit the specific permission decay vulnerability to spread laterally and infect the network in under 3 minutes, compromising at least 70% of the integrated systems and causing a citywide data blackout. Her speech was rapid fire, yet her logic remained surgical and razor sharp. A barrage of technical jargon and precise statistics left Section Chief Lee utterly speechless, with fine beads of cold sweat forming on his brow. A heavy, awkward tension filled the conference room. Every eye in the room turned toward me, waiting to see how I, the newly appointed deputy director, would handle this blatant challenge to our authority. I watched the confident, focused woman at the whiteboard, feeling no trace of resentment or bruised ego. Instead, a surge of genuine admiration welled up within me. Director Su is absolutely correct. This was indeed a critical blind spot in our planning. Experts should lead where expertise is required. We are eager to hear Huanyu Tech's superior solution. My response instantly diffused the rising tension. Su Ting glanced my way, a flicker of surprise crossing her face, as if she hadn't expected such humility. The rest of the session became her personal masterclass. The solution she proposed was logically airtight and brilliantly conceived, not only patching the security flaws we missed, but significantly streamlining our data processing efficiency. The meeting, originally slated to end at 5, dragged on until 7 p.m. Once the formal session wrapped up, the technical staff immediately broke into subgroups to refine the details based on the new blueprint. Su King and I remained in the room for a final debrief. Director Zhao, I didn't expect you to be so open-minded. In technical matters, the most capable mind must lead. There's no point in using administrative rank to suppress the truth. You're even more impressive than I imagined. The feeling is mutual to organize such a chaotic project so meticulously during the preliminary phase. Director Zhao's management skills are truly admirable. This was the first time our conversation moved beyond cold business into something more personal. Right then, my stomach growled at an inopportune moment. Let me order some takeout. Is pizza all right with you? Perfect. It's on me. Consider it a small token of thanks for Director Zhao's support. So there we were, devouring pizza in a deserted conference room. Swigging cola like a couple of college kids, we covered a massive amount of ground. From the inevitable rise of artificial intelligence to the current bottlenecks strangling the big data industry. I realized her technical expertise was just the tip of the iceberg. Her overall vision was incredibly vast. Exchanging ideas with her was pure intellectual bliss. That night, as I lay in bed, The toxic thoughts of Joe Rui's betrayal finally ceased their circling. Even the memory of Anand's tears didn't haunt me. Instead, my mind was occupied by a vibrant new presence, and our heated debate over algorithmic ethics. It hit me right then. A fresh light had quietly begun to pierce through my world. The partnership with Huan Yutek was smoother than I ever dared hope. Su King's elite squad displayed a level of professionalism and grit that was simply staggering under her relentless leadership. The most grueling technical hurdles were demolished one by one. Our interactions naturally became more frequent. Short daily scrums turned into a ritual, supplemented by deep dive strategic reviews every single week. We pulled all-nighters together to refine blueprints, and occasionally fought tooth and nail over minor technical details. She was brilliant but a total workaholic. I'd often catch her slumped in her chair after a marathon session, massaging her temples with a weary hand. Exhaustion etched across her face. Yet the moment work called, she transformed back into a high-functioning warrior. In her, I saw a rare, untainted passion I hadn't encountered in years. A raw, absolute devotion to her craft. It was magnetic, I couldn't deny it. Still, I maintained a strict, disciplined boundary, keeping our connection purely professional. The wreckage of my failed marriage remained a jagged scar, a constant silent warning to never hand out my trust so easily again, especially not to a woman. One afternoon, right after lunch, my old friend Old Wang gave me a ring. He sounded absolutely buzzing, his tone laced with a hint of malicious delight. Yeezy, take a wild guess. You won't believe what juicy intel I just stumbled upon. Cut the suspense, Wang. It's about that piece of trash Sun Peng, a buddy of mine from back home. I actually bumped into him a couple of days ago. You won't believe the pathetic state he's in right now. I remained silent, listening intently. That punk's little scheme with your wife. It had nothing to do with some grand romance. He was gambling on futures trading, and ended up drowning in a massive mountain of debt. He was running like a rat, hiding from everyone. What he was really after was your hard-earned cash. Your property and your assets. He used his relationship with Joe Rui as a mere springboard, treating that foolish woman like a disposable pawn. All that talk about the child is mine and let's build a life together. Pure, unadulterated lies to manipulate her. His goal was to keep her loyal and obsessed, just so she'd help him lock you behind bars. Hearing this, I didn't feel any major shockwaves in my heart. I had already pieced together most of this sordid reality. After he packed his bags and fled from your life, didn't he scurry back home to hide out? Oh, well, he couldn't stay hidden for long before the debt collectors found him. Those guys aren't exactly known for their mercy. They broke his leg as a warning and held him captive in a seedy, rundown motel, demanding his family pay a massive ransom for his release. A family like his, they couldn't scrape that kind of money together. His parents begged the creditors, time and time again, nearly kneeling in the dirt, but it was all for nothing. But here's the kicker, the most cinematic part. Do you know how he finally managed to slither away? He took his own biological sister, a young girl who just started college, and basically sold her off to the head of those creditors to serve as a companion. He traded his sister's entire future just to buy his own freedom. My breathing hitched for a split second. Even a tiger doesn't devour its own cubs. I always knew Sun Peng was greedy and venomous, but I never imagined his humanity had withered to such a degree. For his own skin, he was willing to sacrifice every last thing, including the happiness and dignity of his own blood. And Joe Roy fell for that kind of man. For a monster like that, she utterly demolished our home, and she utterly demolished her own future in the process. How profoundly pathetic and absurdly laughable. Yeezy, are you still there? My buddy just sent me a snapshot. Do you want to see it? Send it over. A moment later, my phone buzzed in my palm. I tapped the image open. The photo was captured at a chaotic, grimy train station. Sun Peng was decked out in a cheap, ragged tracksuit, one leg encased in a bulky plaster cast, as he leaned heavily on a crutch. His face was a mosaic of nasty bruises, his eyes filled with sheer terror and hollow numbness. He was wedged between a crowd of migrant laborers, shuffling toward a decrepit, low-budget train headed south. The man who once sat in my home charming and suave, that cousin who once paraded around in tailored suits, was now reduced to a pathetic stray mutt. No, even a dog has more dignity than him. I moved the dinner venue to a spot near the office, an inconspicuous high-end private eatery. I didn't invite the upper management, only the core members of both task forces. Director Zhao, are you trying to save our budget with this choice? Shouts. It's not about the money. Fancy hotels offer nothing but hollow prestige. This place offers genuine connection and flavor. Our teams have been in the trenches together for so long. We're practically family now. There's no need for that corporate theater. My words instantly ignited the atmosphere. Huan Yutek's young engineers finally shed their stiff reserve. Su King was seated right beside me. She had ditched her rigid professional suit today for a soft cream-colored cashmere sweater. Her hair cascaded loosely over her shoulders, stripping away her sharp corporate edge, and replacing it with a gentle, sophisticated grace. Director Zhao, this toast is for you. You're the most unconventional client I've ever worked with. Unconventional in what way? You don't act like a boss. You act like a brother in arms. With that, she tilted her head back and downed the drink. Her tolerance for alcohol was far beyond what I expected. Halfway through the dinner, the alcohol had begun to take hold of everyone. The conversation drifted away from deadlines and into our real lives. Director Zhao, since you're so young and successful, your wife must be an absolute beauty, right? The moment the words left his mouth, the atmosphere at the table instantly froze solid. My secretary Xiaoli turned pale and was about to snap a reprimand, but I raised my hand to silence him. I grabbed the bottle and poured myself a brimming glass of wine, then slowly stood up. I don't have a partner. I've actually just recently finalized my divorce. The entire room was stunned into silence. The engineer who asked the question looked utterly petrified. But it doesn't matter. It's all in the past now. With that, I downed the entire glass in one defiant gulp. Su King had been watching me in total silence the whole time. There was no prying curiosity in her gaze, nor was there any patronizing pity. Only a faint knowing and tranquil understanding. Once the dinner party wrapped up, everyone went their separate ways. Su King had clearly indulged in quite a bit of wine. A soft crimson flush dusted her cheeks, and her steps were slightly unsteady. Let me drive you home. There's no need to trouble you, Director Zhao. I can just hail a cab myself. Get in the car. My tone left absolutely no room for debate. She glanced at me for a beat, and didn't push back any further. She pulled the door open, and slid into the passenger seat. The car was filled with a quiet stillness. I turned on the stereo, letting some soothing instrumental music fill the space. Suddenly she spoke up, shattering the silence. I hadn't expected her to be so blunt with her questions. My grip on the steering wheel tightened instinctively. Nothing special, just a basic personality clash. I gave her the most perfunctory excuse I could muster. She turned her head, staring at the neon lights of the nightscape, and didn't press me for more. My own parents split up while I was in college. My father ran off with his secretary. My mother fought it for the longest time, but eventually she just lost all hope. She ended up moving far away. She spoke as if reciting someone else's biography, her tone as mundane as if discussing the weather. Since that day, I've understood one fundamental truth. And what truth is that? Mountains can crumble and people can vanish. Lean on others and they'll only run away. Ultimately, you are the only one you can truly rely on. That's why I bury myself in my work. I need to become powerful enough, so formidable that I never have to depend on anyone ever again. My life finally seemed to be gravitating toward a fresh, radiant new horizon. I was almost beginning to believe that those wretched memories had truly faded into the distance, until that fateful Saturday afternoon. I had gone to my parents' place for dinner. After the meal, my mother mysteriously pulled me aside, insisting on thrusting a photograph into my hands. She claimed it was the daughter of an old comrade, a civil servant as well, and she begged me to go meet her. I rejected the offer with a bittersweet forced laugh. Leaving my parents' house, it was still quite early. Unwilling to return immediately to that hollow, empty apartment, I drove to the city's largest flagship bookstore. I wanted to pick up some volumes on urban planning and governance. The store was bustling with people, yet enveloped in a tranquil, scholarly atmosphere. I lost myself in the simple joy of browsing the shelves, feeling remarkably at peace. Just as I was heading to the counter with a stack of heavy books, I cut through the children's literature section, and a figure both hauntingly familiar and strangely foreign collided with my field of vision without warning. It was Zhou Rui. She was crouching in front of a bookshelf, seemingly searching for something. She was gaunt, frighteningly so. She looked like a mere shadow of her former self. Her once meticulously styled hair was now haphazardly tied back, revealing a face that was pale and utterly drained. She was draped in a faded, worn-out jacket, with zero trace of her former pampered high-maintenance aura. My gaze drifted away from her, and landed on the person beside her. A tiny fragile figure, clutching a tattered doll with a broken arm, sat in silence upon the cold floor. It was An. She had withered away. The rosy glow of her cheeks had vanished, replaced by a sickly, sallow complexion. Those eyes, once bright and sparkling like dark jewels, now looked as if they were veiled in thick dust, hollow and devoid of life. She just sat there with haunting stillness, neither crying nor making a sound, like a discarded doll forgotten by the entire world. In that heartbeat, my heart felt as if an invisible hand had violently seized it, crushing the very pulse out of my chest. The warnings my mother whispered, the bleak scenes Auntie Lee described, they all coalesced into a jagged, razor-sharp blade, methodically flaying my nerves raw. I instinctively recoiled, taking a step back, to conceal myself behind a towering bookshelf. I watched them, feeling as though the very air had been sucked from the room. Jorei finally located a book, a flimsy, discounted collection of fairy tales. She stood up and gave Anan a gentle tug. Ananti. It's time to head home. Her voice was exhausted, strained, and raspy. Anan didn't budge. She merely tilted her head up, staring at her mother with a blank, vacant gaze. Joroi let out a heavy sigh and leaned down to scoop her up. In that exact moment, An's eyes drifted past Jorui's shoulder, piercing through the narrow gap between the shelves until they locked onto me. Our gazes collided in midair. For that fleeting second, the entire world seemed to grind to a halt. First came a wave of blankness in her eyes, followed by a flicker of pure confusion, and then a fragile, cautious shimmer of faint hope laced with a terrifying trace of fear. Her tiny lips trembled slightly, yet no sound escaped them. This was the child who once lunged into my arms with joy, screaming "Daddy" at the top of her lungs. Now she only stared at me from a distance, paralyzed by a timid, soul-crushing hesitation, as if trying to verify if I were merely a haunting specter. Jo-ri instantly sensed her daughter's strange behavior. She followed Anan's transfixed gaze and turned her head, locking eyes with me. Her face turned a ghostly skeletal white in an instant. Terror, shame, and absolute humiliation. A chaotic storm of emotions clashed across her features, like a cornered animal sensing a predator. She scooped Anan up in a frantic blur, using the child's small body to shield her own disgraced face, before fleeing the scene in a desperate, panicked retreat. She stumbled and recoiled through the crowded aisles, vanishing through the bookstore exit like a shadow. I stood rooted to the spot, paralyzed and motionless. The stack of heavy technical volumes in my arms suddenly felt as weightless as ash. My hands were trembling uncontrollably. My heart was screaming in agony. It wasn't for Jo-ri that woman wasn't worth a single ounce of my emotional energy anymore. It was entirely for that innocent, broken child. Suking was at the podium reporting the latest tech milestones, frequently casting glances in my direction to solicit my executive input. Each time I offered nothing but a hollow, distracted grunt, or a perfunctory, "I'll leave it to your judgment." My erratic, uncharacteristic behavior was glaringly obvious to everyone in the room. As the meeting finally adjourned, Suking didn't rush out with the others. She approached my desk and placed a steaming cup of coffee before me. "You're completely off your game today. Did something happen to rattle you?" I took a slow, deliberate sip of the coffee. It was incredibly bitter. "It's nothing. I just didn't catch much sleep last night." Suking scrutinized me with a piercing, knowing look, choosing not to dismantle my obvious lie. "If there's a bottleneck with the project, reach out to me at any time. But if the issue is personal, I expect you to recalibrate your focus immediately. I need a partner who is 100% mentally present." Her words were brutally direct, bordering on cold and clinical. Yet for some inexplicable reason, her bluntness actually made me feel a sense of relief. Compared to fragile sympathy and tiptoeing comfort, I craved this brand of cold rational awakening. "I understand." I gave a sharp nod. Throughout that day, I forced every ounce of my stamina into my work. I dissected a mountain of bureaucratic documents, untangled a three-way departmental dispute, and conducted a field inspection of the server facility's progress. I used the grind to lobotomize my own racing thoughts. But the moment the world fell silent on An, that haunting look would resurface with agonizing clarity. Late that night, I was still grinding away in the office, cross-referencing the final technical manifesto. A soft rhythmic knock echoed against the door. I looked up to see Suching stepping into the room. She hadn't clocked out either, still at it, like, almost done, just the final document. She didn't say another word. She simply took the seat directly across from me, flipped open her own laptop, and began silently plowing through her own tasks. Neither of us uttered a syllable to disturb the other. The only sound was the crisp, rapid clicking of keyboards. This wordless companionship, surprisingly, allowed my restless heart to finally find a strange anchor. An hour later, I had finally cleared my entire plate. I slammed the laptop shut and exhaled a long kangxie, a long, heavy breath of catharsis. "Let's go. I'll drop you off." "All right." On the drive back, that same soothing instrumental melody drifted through the car. As we idled at a red light at a major intersection, as if possessed by some impulse, I finally spoke. "I ran into my ex-wife and that child yesterday." The moment the words escaped my lips, I was startled by my own sudden vulnerability. I thought I'd carry these secrets to my grave. Suking turned her head, observing me in silence. No shock, no prying questions. She was the ultimate patient listener. "She's doing terrible." The child is even worse." I saw the way she looked at me. I can't even finish the sentence. That agonizing cocktail of lingering guilt, heartbreak, and sheer powerlessness made my throat tighten into a knot. The crimson light flickered to emerald green. I accelerated, pushing the car further into the night. "You feel like you failed that child, don't you?" I honestly don't know anymore. Logically, I know she isn't my flesh and blood. I'm not the architect of her tragedy. But emotionally, I can't just erase 5 years of being her father. Zhao Yi, you aren't some flawless saint. You're just a man. And being human means having scars, having a soft heart and feeling the sting of pain. There is no shame in that. I used to despise my father with every fiber of my being. I blamed him for obliterating my home and shattering my mother's entire life. I swore an oath never to grant him forgiveness until the year before last when a terminal illness struck him. That woman drained his bank accounts and vanished. He was left completely isolated in a hospital bed. When I went to see him, seeing how withered and fragile he had become, I realized the hatred had just evaporated. I didn't hate him anymore. I just felt a deep, profound pity. There are some realities we are powerless to alter, and some people we are destined to let down. The only thing left for us to do is accept the wreckage and keep moving toward the horizon. Her words acted like a soothing balm, slowly smoothing out the jagged creases of my soul. She was right, I can't rewrite the past, nor can I pay the price for someone else's sins. All I can do is protect my own integrity and carve out a new path for my future. The car pulled up to the curb beneath her apartment. This time, she didn't immediately unbuckle her seatbelt. A long, heavy silence filled the cabin. Chao Yi, if you truly can't turn your back on that child, maybe there is something you can actually do. Like what? I don't have all the answers, but don't do it as her father. Do it as a mentor who once genuinely cared for her. For instance, you could anonymously fund her education, or perhaps find another channel to uplift her quality of life, just so she knows this cruel world hasn't totally abandoned her. Of course, that's merely my perspective. How you choose to proceed depends entirely on the dictates of your own heart. She offered a gentle smile before stepping out. Good night, watching her silhouette disappear into the building. I sat in the car for an eternity before starting the engine. Suxing's words had finally cracked a window in my soul. A window leading toward true liberation, and a long overdue reconciliation with myself. Maybe I really can make a difference. Not for Zhou Rui, nor for that wretched, mistake-ridden past, but strictly for the sake of that child. The little girl who called me daddy for 5 years. I wanted her to see a flicker of light in her darkening world. I grabbed my phone and dialed my PI friend, Old Wang. Old Wang, I need a favor. The call connected as the city fell silent. In the dead of night, his voice was thick with drowsiness. But he snapped awake the moment he recognized me. Yeezy, it's incredibly late. Did something go sideways? No, I just need you to handle something for me. I leaned back into the leather of my office chair, staring at the city's glittering skyline. My tone was more composed than it had ever been. I want to anonymously sponsor a child. The line went dead quiet for a beat. Old Wang was a sharp man. It didn't take him long to deduce exactly who I was talking about. Are you absolutely sure about this, Soul? He asked with uncharacteristic gravity. I'm certain. I looked down at my own palms. Those hands had cradled that child countless times. Yet now they could only help her from the shadows. I refused to let her life be pulverized by the sins of adults. I get where you're coming from, Old Wang muttered thoughtfully. But we can't just hand over raw cash, not with them. Zhou Rui's family are nothing but greedy scavengers. The second they smell money, not a single cent will actually reach that girl. They'll just use it to plug their own bottomless pits. That's exactly what I was worried about. That's why I'm reaching out to you. You have the right connections. Help me draft a foolproof strategy. Old Wang lapsed into a long silence on the other end. There is a way, he said. We can establish a dedicated educational trust fund and hire a reputable law firm to execute it. This capital will remain entirely independent from that family, overseen strictly by legal counsel. The sole beneficiary will be the child Zhao Anan. The use of funds will be strictly limited to her schooling, medical care, and basic living necessities. This proposal was music to my ears. For instance, tuition fees and extracurricular costs can be wired directly to schools and institutions by the firm. Medical bills will be reimbursed based on hospital receipts. Living expenses can be labeled as a compassionate community grant, distributed through social workers or her school teachers, in the form of tangible goods. Things like clothing, food, and school supplies can be handed directly to the child. This ensures with maximum certainty that every cent is spent exclusively on her well-being. Old Wang's logic was meticulous and thorough, instantly dissolving all of my lingering anxieties. This plan is perfect. I added, the beneficiary's legal guardian, meaning Zhou Rui, will have the right to be informed, but absolutely zero power to touch the money. Furthermore, make her sign an ironclad agreement. If the child suffers abuse or her basic needs aren't met, the trust reserves the legal right to challenge her custody. Call it my own personal agenda. I'm providing the funds so they take proper care of her. If they fail, I won't hesitate to use the law to make them pay a devastating price. Consider it done. We can bake all of that into the trust agreement. Old Wang agreed without a moment's hesitation. As for the donor's identity, we'll use a shell name like the Starlight Charity Foundation. I guarantee no one will ever trace it back to you. Good, let's make it happen. Get the lawyers on the line. The sooner the better. As for the initial capital, I'll start by wiring you 5 million. Old Wang was clearly staggered by the figure on the other end. Easy, isn't that a bit overkill? Raising a kid doesn't cost nearly that much. It's not too much. I stared out the window, my gaze tranquil and distant. I originally intended for this money to be her dowry. Now consider it an early gift for her future. This is officially the last thing I can ever do for her. After hanging up the phone, it felt as if a colossal boulder had finally been lifted from my chest. I can no longer love her as her father, but I can at least use my power to hold an umbrella over her head, ensuring she won't be so utterly defenseless against the coming storms. This is a form of liberation, and a long-awaited peace offering, a final reconciliation with my own soul. I opened my phone and found Suqing's chat window, typing out 2 simple words. Thank you. Her response flashed across the screen almost instantly. Just 2 words as well. Good night. Staring at those simple characters, a faint, involuntary smile tugged at the corners of my lips. I knew then that the frozen lake in my heart was finally thawing, and even the night sky outside seemed to have softened its edge. With the matter of Anan resolved, an incredible sense of lightness washed over me. Even the complexities of my work became easier to navigate. The synergy between Suqing and me grew more seamless, our bond advancing steadily alongside the project's milestones. We started spending our weekends hiking together, watching the clouds drift lazily across the mountain peaks, while discussing our individual visions for the future. She aspired to dominate the field of artificial intelligence, creating innovations that would genuinely reshape the world. As for me, I wanted to take the city under my wing and transform it into a stronghold that was safer, more efficient, and a place that truly felt like a compassionate home. On rainy afternoons, we would often retreat to a secluded, quiet cafe, each lost in our own respective books. Occasionally, we'd look up and share a knowing smile, understanding the profound peace in each other's eyes without a word. I realized that when I was by her side, there was no need for masks, nor any desperate need to please. We were simply 2 fascinating souls, drawn together by mutual attraction and unwavering respect. Today marked the triumphant conclusion of the project's first phase. To celebrate this massive win and blow off some steam, Suqing suggested our combined teams head to the suburbs for a retreat. I readily agreed to the idea. We picked a picturesque resort nestled between lush mountains and crystal streams. By day, everyone dove into high-energy team-building games, launching into epic water fights, where all professional hierarchies dissolved into chaotic fun. Even I, the usually stern and stoic deputy director, was transformed into a literal drowned rat by the engineers' water guns. I didn't feel a shred of annoyance. Instead, I laughed and played along with them completely in the zone. Suqing stood just a few yards away, witnessing my absolute state of disarray, her eyes curving into beautiful sparkling crescents as she laughed. She looked as radiant as a new moon. That evening, we fired up a massive buffet barbecue. Everyone huddled around the bonfire cracking open beers and belting out songs at the top of their lungs. The vibe was electric and vibrantly upbeat, sitting by the crackling flames. I scanned the circle of young, spirited, and glowing faces, feeling a long-lost warmth finally bloom in my chest. I realized that life isn't just about cold betrayals and schemes. Pure, unadulterated joy still exists. Suqing sauntered over with 2 beers and sat beside me, offering one with a casual flick of her wrist. You seem like a completely different person today, don't you? Yeah, well, you've smiled more today than in the last 3 months combined. Her eyes shimmered with an extra intensity under the dancing firelight. That's because I feel like I've finally unlocked a new way to live. We fell back into a comfortable silence, simply sipping our drinks in the cool night air, staring into the heart of the bonfire, while the distant echoes of singing drifted over us. After an indeterminate amount of time, my phone began to vibrate in my pocket. It was a call from my mother. I stepped into a secluded, quiet corner to pick up. Yeezy, hope I'm not interrupting anything? Not at all, Mom. What's up? Yeah, I just wanted to give you a quick update. Things over at Joe Rui's place seem to have taken a turn. Auntie Lee told me that. Someone claiming to be a lawyer tracked down Joe Rui recently. Apparently some Starlight Foundation has stepped in to sponsor Anan. They've already enrolled her in the city's top-tier bilingual kindergarten, and they've even hired a specialized child psychologist to provide her with weekly counseling sessions. I listened in total silence. At first, her parents were convinced it was a scam, thinking someone was trying to shake them down for cash. But when they realized the foundation was covering every single expense, they were absolutely over the moon. Now, their treatment of Anan has done a complete 180. They're treating her like a precious treasure now, terrified that their little golden goose might fly away. The poor girl is actually starting to brighten up, her teachers mentioned. She's finally making new friends at school, and even volunteered to perform on stage recently. My mother let out a long, relieved sigh on the other end. I have no idea which saint is behind this miracle, but as long as the child is safe, that's all that matters. My heart can finally find some peace. That's good to hear. My voice remained perfectly calm after hanging up. I looked up at the stars blazing bright and dense, shimmering exactly like Anan's eyes used to. I felt the final lingering shadow in the depths of my soul vanish. I turned and strolled back toward the warmth of the fire. Suqing was still there waiting. Is everything settled at home? Yeah, everything's finally settled. I gazed into her eyes, finding a brilliant, sprawling galaxy hidden within them. A sudden powerful impulse hit me. I wanted to pull her into my arms right then and there. But I held back, Some moments deserve a more perfect timing, and I knew with absolute certainty that moment was close. After over a year of grueling, relentless warfare in the trenches, the Smart City project finally reached its grand premiere. The municipal government threw a massive press conference to celebrate. As the lead director of the entire operation, I stood center stage under the blinding spotlights, presenting to media outlets and guests from across the nation. This was the culmination of countless souls' blood, sweat, and tears. I caught Director Zhang's gratified expression in the crowd, and saw my colleagues beaming with a shared sense of glory. And there, sitting in the very front row, was Su Qing. Her focus was locked entirely on me, her gaze shimmering with admiration, with pure pride, and a profound affection that only I could truly decipher. The launch was a resounding, flawless success. At the victory banquet that evening, the praise for my leadership was overwhelming, and he made a public vow that I would lead the charge on the next major urban expansion. I became the absolute center of gravity in the room. Applause, praise, and congratulations surged toward me like a tidal wave. I acknowledged each one with a polite smile, yet my heart remained remarkably still. I deserved this success. It was the empire I built with my own 2 hands. After crawling through the fires of hellish betrayal, as the banquet wound down, I politely declined every offer for an after-party, and walked out of the hotel with Su Qing. The night breeze was crisp, clearing the lingering fog of the wine. We didn't call for the car. Instead, we strolled side by side down the tree-lined boulevard. Congratulations, Atito. Director Zhao. No. I suppose I should call you our grand hero now. Congratulations to you too. CEO Su. This project wouldn't exist without your elite squad. The final payment of the contract will clear by tomorrow. Furthermore, as for the bonuses for your entire team, I'm personally doubling them out of my own pocket. Director Zhao, you certainly have a grand style. We kept walking and talking, the atmosphere effortlessly light and pleasant. Just as we were approaching the parking lot, a gaunt, frail figure suddenly lunged from the shadows and blocked our path. It was Zhou Rui. She was draped in ill-fitting, tattered rags, her face a sickly, deathly shade of pale. Her eyes were locked onto mine, burning with a mix of despair and a wild, desperate madness. Su Qing instinctively stepped closer to me, her gaze turning sharp and guarded. I gently patted her hand, to signal that she was safe. Then I looked at Zhou Rui. What do you want, you? My voice was as freezing as midwinter ice. Zhao Yi. Zhou Rui's voice was agonizingly raspy. She darted a glance at Su Qing standing beside me, a flicker of pure envy and resentment crossing her features. But she quickly shifted her focus back to me, pleading with everything she had. Lend me some money. No, just give me some money, please. Why? Because An is sick. She's deathly ill. The surgeons insist she needs a transplant. A fortune beyond our wildest dreams. My family is completely bled dry. We're penniless. That measly settlement you gave me, my parents snatched it, to pay off my brother's degenerate gambling debts. Zhao Yi, I'm begging you on my hands and knees, for the sake of the life we once shared as husband and wife. For the 5 years Anan spent calling you daddy, please, you have to save her. She's an innocent soul. She made a move to drop to her knees as she wailed. I watched her amateurish, pathetic performance, without feeling even a ripple of emotion. The legal overseer of the Starlight Trust sends me a detailed briefing on Anan every single week. I know for a fact that the child is thriving healthy, and genuinely happy. Every syllable dripping from Zhou Rui's mouth was a lie. She likely saw my recent triumphs plastered all over the news, witnessed a woman as brilliant as Su Qing by my side, and she just couldn't stomach it. She was consumed by envy. She wanted to use that child as her final bargaining chip, to squeeze one last drop of profit out of me. Or perhaps she simply wanted to sabotage my new life. In my past life, I might have exploded in a fit of righteous fury, mercilessly exposing her web of deceit and dragging her through the mud. But now looking at this creature twisted by jealousy and hollowed out by her own insatiable greed, I only found her profoundly pathetic. Zhou Rui, I've made myself crystal clear. There is absolutely nothing left between us. As for Anan's medical welfare, I finalized those arrangements a long time ago. The Starlight Foundation's lead counsel, Mr. Wang, should have already delivered the medical coverage papers to you. Anan is covered by a premium lifelong medical insurance policy. Regardless of the illness or the cost, every cent will be fully covered by the foundation. All you have to do is take her to the designated clinic. You won't even need to pick up a pen. I stared into her eyes, which were bulging with shock, and added with cold, deliberate precision. You didn't track me down today for the child's sake. You used her as a front to extort another payout. Let me be blunt. It's never going to happen. From the very second you filed those malicious false charges, you should have realized the ultimate price. You won't ever squeeze another single cent out of me. If you actually care about that girl's well-being, then shut up and use the resources the foundation provides to raise her with some shred of decency. But if you dare to use her as a pawn again, or entertain any more of your delusional schemes, I have 1,000 ways to strip you of your custody. My words were like a barrage of freezing blades, utterly severing her final connection to her greed. She collapsed onto the pavement, her face a mask of ash, unable to choke out even a single syllable. I didn't grant her another glance. I turned my back on the wreckage, and naturally interlaced my fingers with Su Qing's. Her hand was radiating warmth, and she squeezed back firmly, offering me a smile of pure, unwavering reassurance. Let's go home, okay? Hand in hand, we walked beneath the city's dazzling neon, heading toward our car, and toward the brand new future we would build together. Behind me, the woman who once demolished my entire world had finally been swept away into the dust of history.